Hello, and welcome to Under 1000. My name's Thomas Flower, and each episode I'll read you a new piece of flash fiction. All of the stories are 1000 words or less. Today, I'll be reading The Happy Lie. Please be aware that this episode deals with themes of childhood trauma and abuse. If that's likely to upset you, or anyone that you're listening with, then you might want to skip this one. Despite what they all said, Jeff was sure he was making the right decision. The technology had only recently become available, and so opting to be one of the first to have the procedure came with its own risks, of course. But he simply couldn't turn the opportunity down when it presented itself to him. Memory alteration? It seemed so sci-fi, so fascinating, and, most importantly of all, so liberating. Jeff had requested to have his childhood memories changed. He'd written a script for what he wanted put in their place, constructing an image of the perfect family life he'd always dreamed of. It was something he'd never had himself, despite his wishes. When he cast his mind back, he was only able to catch glimpses of what had really happened. Broken bottles, a scar across his back, his father shouting angrily while holding Jeff's arms, his mother lying on the sofa, not paying attention. The memories were barely half-formed, like somehow his brain wouldn't allow him to fully relive what had happened. But now he intended to dispense with them altogether, and to create something new in their place. An image of idyllic family home life, with his parents and sisters smiling warmly, supporting him graciously and loving him unconditionally. A fantasy for him, but one he was still excited to claim as his own. The doctors had warned him of the risks, of course. The procedure had been tested extensively on simulated models and animals, but he was one of the first groups of people to try it out. Although they were confident that things should go well, no one really knew what the outcome would be exactly. For this reason, his friends had tried to dissuade him from it, saying he just needed more time in therapy to really deal with the problem. But Jeff was tired of all that. He wanted to erase this part of his life for good, to remake his childhood in an image he preferred, and thereby, hopefully, to remake himself. He signed the last of his waivers and dressed in a hospital gown, waiting to go under. When he awoke groggily after the procedure, he tried to determine if he felt any different. He didn't think so. Things seemed mostly the same, from what he could tell. The doctors were pleased with how the operation had gone, and Jeff took this as a good sign. After running a few simple tests to make sure he was still of sound mind, they discharged him on the condition that he return weekly for further questioning and checkups. By this point, Jeff was only too happy to leave. In the coming days, he tried to test the limits of his new memories. He would cast his mind back and see what images he now conjured. Smiling faces, a freshly baked cake, his mother sitting and helping him with his homework, his father giving him some money to buy a treat from the shops. Falsehoods, of course, but ones which felt real to him nonetheless. And yet soon, Jeff discovered that there was a thin quality to these memories, almost like paper plastered over a wall. If he tried, he found himself able to peel back the artifice and see the real memories underneath again. But only if he really tried. In day-to-day life, he was given the peace of mind that his childhood had been an idyllic and happy one, and while he could choose to focus and unveil the truth underneath, he had little desire or motivation to do so. In fact, Jeff treasured his new memories. Though he knew in some part of his mind that they were a mere falsehood, he found that his automatic belief in them brought him comfort and happiness regardless. Though the cynical may say that he was only lying to himself, He found himself unconcerned by the idea. He'd found a way to put his past behind him, after all, even if it was only by papering over it. His new false memories had brought him an ease which he had not felt for years, if indeed at all. His friends told him that he had changed, though. No one said that it was for the worse, but he assumed that was what they meant. It made him so angry. Why should his happiness cause them to think he was a worse person? Did they only like him when he was miserable, broken, and insecure? It seemed so unfair that the people he held dear didn't see how important this was for him. At his first consultation, they asked if he wanted to reverse the procedure. It was explained that within the first few weeks it was still possible, before the memory became fully entrenched within the brain. They advised that if he was experiencing any adverse effects, then he should strongly consider reversal. Jeff had to pause and think for a minute. He felt happy, and like he was still himself. Why did the others disagree? Could changing himself this way really have such a sizable impact? And could it really be so terrible to cover up the parts of his life that had only ever brought him pain? He thought it was a change for the better. He was happy with it. He just didn't understand why the others seemed to disagree. Pondering still, he looked into the consultant's eyes, seeking the bravery to give his answer. "No," he blurted out abruptly. "I don't want to change back." He might be living in a fantasy, but it was his, and he refused to let go. Thank you for listening to Under 1000. I'm your host, Thomas Flower. To follow the show online, look for Under 1000 Pod on Twitter or Facebook. If you'd like to support the show on Patreon, go to patreon.com/under1000pod, where you can sign up to read each month's stories in advance, as well as to have a thank you be read during these credits. The theme music is an instrumental version of In Between Days by Nick Tate and the Sharks. To hear the full song and more from the same EP, go to Nick Tate, NICTATE, and thesharks.bandcamp.com, or search for them on your favourite streaming platform. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and that you'll join me again next time for some more super short fiction.